Okay, I just got the go-ahead to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a good lunch. I'm Rizwan. I'll continue the hosting for the rest of today. Welcome to session 3, titled Digital Literacy, Divide and Usage, Concepts and Empirics. We begin with our chair, Shahryar Haq, technology director at BRAC, having previously worked for the Canadian government for more than 20 years. Our first paper presentation is from Menaz Rabbani, Samab Rahman, and Ovino Farouk, all of BIGD. Next is our presentation from Professor Muhammad Shahadat Hussain Siddiqui from the University of Dhaka. And we end the session's presentations with Pratika Reddy presenting virtually from Fiji National University. If all our presenters could be seated on the table on the stage. Thank you.
I think we have everybody in the room. It's not the best time to have this sort of meetings, but I guess you all enjoyed your lunch. সবাই কি চলে আসছি আমরা বাইরের থেকে? Jishan bhai, because I think this is going to be a very interesting session that we're going to have. So, okay, fantastic. And we have people joining online, one of the speaker. Fantastic. So thank you, Rezwan bhai, for the introduction. Very humbled. I just wanted to say that I'm very privileged. I feel very privileged to be facilitating this session. Thanks to the speakers, BIGD team, and especially Imran bhai for arranging this important event, and I think at the very right time. So governance by the government or anything that has an E on it is very close to my heart, because I have been working on it for decades now. Simply put, I mean, you have heard the talks that have happened in the morning. So I'm not going to go into the details of the things, and I'm sure you all understand. But simply put, what I have experienced and what I have understood as e-governance is, it's nothing but a sort of single one-stop internet gateway to all of government services. So basically a single window of those services for all levels. And the purpose of e-governance should be nothing more than just increasing the response time, I mean, making it better and enhancing the citizens' interaction. So basically what Anir bhai was talking about, the cost, time, and visit proposition. And Bangladesh started implementing e-governance, I think, since 2001. And it would be very interesting to see after 20 years what we have learned. And also the two words that we are talking about now, digital literacy, if it has got to do anything with e-governance, and if it does, what it means. So today I have with me, I want to reintroduce again Mena Zappa, Head of Operations and Strategic Engagement and Partnership from BIGD, who will talk about the usage of e-governance services, specifically to skills required and non-skill variables. Then I have Dr. Shadat Hossain Siddiqui bhai. He is a professor of economics at Dhaka University and research associate with BIGD. And he's going to share with us some understanding on the first and second digital divide in the rural Bangladesh. And our final speaker will be Pitika Reddy Appa. She has joined online. She is a lecturer at the Fiji National University, and I think she's going to introduce something exciting, a tool for championing digital literacy. So I think without further ado, I would like to introduce request Mena Zappa to please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I won't do much of the talking. Sima and Obhinno here will present two separate papers that we've been working on together. I'll just do a brief introduction, sort of to to tell you the story behind the work that we've done. So basically, as Sharia Bhai mentioned, we were interested in e-governance and trying to understand what the government was doing with the digital services that are being introduced and how people are using it, what the experience of using these services was. So in 2019, we started working on this. And much of the secondary literature, the case studies, the exploratory work that we read often ended with a policy recommendation or just a conclusion saying, oh, people are not using digital services because digital literacy is low. So then we figured that if we want to understand uptake of digital services, we need to understand the state of digital literacy in Bangladesh. So in 2019, we did a national survey on digital literacy and usage of services. So that's how we started. And we did a second round in 2021. So the two pieces of work that will be presented today will be based on these two data sets. Now, just briefly, to give you an idea of the kind of process the thought process that we went through. So the first challenge we faced when we were designing the survey was defining digital literacy. Digital literacy is defined in different ways in different parts of the literature. For example, in the education literature, digital literacy is all about how people learn from digital content. In the finance literature, it's about how people make transactions, monetary transactions online. So it's differently defined in different parts of the literature. And for us, none of that made sense. We were interested in public services and digitization of public services. So we went with the very basics. We wanted to measure digital literacy. And we went with, do you have a phone? Basic things. Can you turn on a phone? Can you read an email? Can you send an SMS? So basic things like that. And when the data came in 2019, we were puzzled again. Because first of all, our definition of digital literacy didn't seem to capture everything that we wanted to capture. And we were excited and really expecting to see a link between digital literacy and the use of digital services. But we didn't find that link. So the relationship between these two is not very clear, linear in that sense. And the biggest challenge is, of course, that, out of the 50 services that we had listed in our survey, only 15 had some data. Most of the services people didn't know about. So the data was limited, and also we didn't find that relationship between the two variables that we were expecting to find. So then we started thinking more in depth about what was going on. And then we realized that even services are different from one another. So you need different kinds of skills, not just different levels of skills for accessing and using different kinds of government services that are available today. So for example, for applying for a passport, you need to have an email address and be able to communicate through email. But for the national ID, you don't need that, right? So when we measure digital literacy by being able to use email, we're not capturing the right measure for all the services. For vaccine registration, we needed to download and upload files on the application. But for other services, for NID, for example, you don't need to do that. So we realized we have an aggregate measure of digital literacy, even with the basics that we had to go service by service. So in 2021, in our survey, we really picked a few, focused on a few services, and then listed out what are the exact things that you need to do to access that service. And then we went and did the survey, and Seema in the first presentation will present what we found there. And the second thing also that we were wondering and thinking about is that digital literacy is not the only thing that's important for digital service use. It's technology adoption. At the end of the day, there are many other factors. First of all, a person will adopt a technology when they really need it, when they see others using it, when they are at a certain level of education, certain level of income, etc. So that's also something that we wanted to explore. And Aubindo in her presentation will show you that we have some interesting variables that we looked at if they're connected to digital use. So that's basically my introduction. I'll hand over to Seema, and if we have time at the end, I'll come back for concluding thoughts.
Hello, everyone. It's Seema Brahman. I work as a research associate at BIGD. Today, I'm going to present our study, and the title of our study is Usage of E-Government Services, Relevance of Service-Specific Skills. I'd like to express my gratitude to my co-authors, Mehnaz Rabbani Abba and Nuzar Abiyataniaz. Let's get started. I hope everyone will enjoy my presentation. Why isn't it working? Okay. We all know that digitalization has many benefits. We see them all around us. We see them in the increased economic growth. We see them in enhanced trade and improved welfare services. We are fortunate that Bangladesh is one of the most digitally competitive nations in South Asia. And according to Bhuya, this digitalization has helped to enhance the e-services in our country. However, if anyone wants to access and reap the full benefits of these services, then we need to, there's a prerequisite that they should be digitally adept and know how to use these digital skills to avail any kind of services. Where do we see pointed? Okay. Okay, looking at the international indices, the picture is not all sunshine because the country is yet to achieve miles before being able to call itself digitally sound. In a study in 2013, it was projected that Bangladesh stood at 118th among 133 nations in the ICT status. In this backdrop, as Mehnaz Appa was mentioning a while ago, we conducted a survey in 2019 to gauge the digital literacy of rural Bangladeshi people. And in 2021, another round of survey was conducted with the very same cohort. The findings from these surveys showed us that if we want to take these public services to the citizens' doorstep, then we need to take service recipients' capacity and their key skills into account. And in this current presentation, I will show you how we attempted to delve into the detailed measures of digital skills and use of e-services in Bangladesh. In this study, we wanted to be as specific as possible because in every service, we need some common skills as well as some very specific skills. Firstly, we wanted to see the skills of the people. Would you please go back to the previous slide? Yes. We wanted to see the skills of the people in terms of each particular service. Do our respondents have the skills to complete each step required? Secondly, taking notes of those measured skills we wanted to see if having or not having these skills can impact availing or not availing the e-services. The next slide, please. Our initial target of our 2021 survey was 6,500 households, and we could finally survey 5,944 households. At this point, I'd like to mention that we wanted to survey the respondents from the 2019 survey. So we couldn't actually get every one of them. So 70% of the respondents were from the 2019 survey and 30% were new. Here, MDAP means most digitally able person. We can see the survey area by district. You can see that we covered all the districts of Bangladesh apart from the hill tracts area, and there is Norail and Meherpur. Please, the next slide. Before moving on to our main part, I'd like to compare some of the services with the 2019 and 2021 data. If you can see, mostly all the services uptakes increased in 2021, except for MRP passport application. That may be due to the travel restrictions that we faced in the due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. I won't spend much time on this slide. Please go to the next one. Thank you. Okay, let's look at these metrics. Here I have put the skills needed for different services in the first row. In every column of this row, we can see that we need to select correct website or app for availing a service. We need to know how to read and write text messages and provide an OTP input registration number or any kind of information that's needed on that website. Or for some services, we might need to create an account, and as Appa was mentioning, for passport registration, you need to know how to check your email. And finally, there is file saving, downloading, and uploading. And in each row, I have selected 5 e-services. Those are checking exam results, online vaccine registration, national ID registration, passport registration, and police clearance certificate. Now, why did we select all these 5 services? I have selected the services which can be availed from your home. It's like if anyone has any working internet connection, a laptop or mobile or tab, they can avail these services from home because the initial registration process of these services is fully digital. Next slide. So in the previous slide, I have put 1 and 0, if you have seen, because if a skill is needed for a service, then I've put 1, and if the skill is not needed for the service, I have put a 0. If anyone can have all these skills, then I say that they have the skill to avail this service. So these are the percentage of the people. I will just say that look at vaccine registration is 12.37%, or a passport registration is 11.08%. It's not we might say that an overwhelming majority didn't know how to access this service, right? Moving on to the next slide. Now we'll see each service separately. For checking exam results online, 16.44% of the respondents have the necessary skills to check results online. For checking results online, we only needed 2 skills. The first one was we need to select the website, and the second one was you need to put your registration number in the box, right? Then your result comes in front of you. So this, among the 16.44% of the people, 41.33% avail the service in the last 2 years. And the respondents who didn't have the skill, 83.56% of the respondents, among them only 8.3 avail the service in the last 2 years. We asked the respondents the question, if you or any member from your household did avail the service in the last 2 years, so it's like if the respondent might avail the service, or any member of his or her household might avail the service. Similar kind of results were found in case of national ID card registration. 9.28% of the respondents had the necessary skills, and 32.55% availed the service in the last 2 years, and 90.72% of the respondents did not have the necessary skills, and among them 10.43% availed the service in the last 2 years. For passport registration, 11% of the respondents had the skills, and 9.64% of them availed the service in the last 2 years. And the people who didn't have the skill was, the percentage was 88.92%, and 3% of them availed the service in the last 2 years. For coronavirus vaccine registration, I think many of us know the Surokkha app, and the skills needed for these services were, thank you. The skills needed for this service where we need to know which website to browse, and providing OTP, checking messages. You needed to put in your NID number, and then you should know how to download the form, right? So 12.37% of the respondents knew how to do all these things. But the interesting part of this slide is either or not they knew how to do it. Staggering 94.15% availed the service last year, and 86% people availed the service last year because they had to do it. They had to do it. They had no other option. This has a similar set, so I'll move on to the regression result. So since I have here you can see that the first row, the skill, it means that I have run a probit regression since it was okay. There is I have run regressions for each services, and for each services the skilled variable was found significant. You can see for checking online exam results, the skill, if a respondent is found to be skilled, then the probability of him checking the result increases by 6.6, and if the age of the respondent increases by each unit, then the probability of checking result also increases by 0.0094. I am moving to the next slide because there's a time constraint. Okay, now we'll move on to the registration behavior of skilled respondents. Okay, now we have seen that they have the necessary skills and if they are availing the services or not. But where do they go to avail the services? Do they do it by themselves, or do they go to some relative or friends or to Union Digital Center to avail the services? For checking exam results online, most of the skill respondents, and that is 81.84%, did it themselves, and 10% went to computer shops and 4% took help from relatives or neighbors. But in case of NIG registration, whether they're skilled or unskilled, we can see that most of them went to UDC computer operator, that is 44%, or they went to Union Porishad, that is 27%. So we can safely assume that NID is perceived as an important official document for identity. And for this critical service, people do not want to take the risk of doing it all by themselves. For coronavirus vaccination registration, 40% of the skilled people did it themselves, and 35% of them went to the local computer or mobile shops. Only 5% of the unskilled respondents did it themselves. You can see the difference in the percentage here. And among those unskilled respondents, 60% went to local computer shop. And for the passport office registration, 54% of the skilled people went to the passport office, and 11% went to local computer shop, and for 20% of them resorted to intermediaries or dalal, and merely 5% did it themselves. For unskilled people, resorting to dalal reaches up to 30%. So here comes the discussion part, and since they're intermediaries with the right skills and many citizens avail the e-services through them, why would a regular citizen need to acquire the skill? If we do not need the skills at all, then what's the point of this whole discussion? So our take on this is that looking into the future, Bangladesh is on its path to streamlining the e-services for the people of Bangladesh. And as a nation, we are in a transition period at this moment in terms of digitalization. And in near future, user-centric direct communication chain will be created like the developed countries. Each citizen will have their own unique identity. So we need to know the current state of the future users. And that's why it's the high time, perfect time, or correct time to gauge the level of skills these people possess to achieve those, to avail those e-services. I'd like to end my presentation with one last point, and that is the data we collected is self-reported. We asked people if you know how to provide OTP, if you know how to read messages. But there was a part in our survey where we checked their skills, some of their skills, and check their skills live. We asked them to show if they can. We asked them to show if they can browse the passport website in front of the enumerators. So there is a dismal picture because nearly 50%, nearly half of the population or the respondents who say that they can browse the website online if they want to avail any specific service, they just couldn't show how to get into that website. They couldn't show us. So maybe the real picture is more disappointing for us. So thank you so much for your kind patience.
Thank you, Appa. I think as I was listening to the presentation and looking at the data, a lot of interesting questions were popping up. But I think we're going to take the questions at the last. We're going to go through all the presentation first. But Ovinno, Appa, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhinav Farooq, and I'll be presenting findings from the study titled Digital Usage in Rural Bangladesh, Insights from a District Level Analysis Using Microdata. So I'm one of the co-authors here, along with Menaz Appa, Mr. Rahan Ahmed, and Ms. Shamal Ahmed. So as the motivation has already been covered by Mehnaz Appa and Seema Appa nicely, I'm not going to waste time on that. So this particular paper, we are trying to attempt to look at several contributing factors towards wider ICT adoption in rural Bangladesh. Next, we also try to assess whether these emerging patterns can be confirmed or explained by national data sources. And thirdly, we also try to assess whether there is any gendered nature in the usage patterns, whether there is any difference between men and women in terms of their usage, and so that it can possibly identify scopes for further research. So to accomplish this, we have used individual level usage microdata from the Digital Literacy and Access to Public Services Survey 2019, the data set, and we have aggregated the usage rates to district level. And we have also used various databases from the BBS to complement this rural data set. So to investigate the regional rural patterns, what we have done is first we have used maps to visualize any salient spatial patterns that may emerge from them, and also supplemented our analysis with a regression approach. And for this particular purpose, we have used the usage rates of feature phone, smartphone, computer, and internet as our dependent variable. And thirdly, as I have mentioned earlier, that we want to explore the gender digital gap. So we have also disaggregated the usage rates by gender to see if there is any divergence in usage between men and women. So for our independent variables, basically we have focused on few relevant socioeconomic variables. So we have the poverty rate, we have income inequality, we have literacy, and we also have we have literacy, and we also have the sectoral concentration of employment. And lastly, we also have international migration. So for international migration, we have used the variable share of migrant households. So what exactly are we calling a migrant household here? For migrant households, if there is at least one member in a particular household who is working abroad, we have considered that household to be a migrant household. And these are all aggregated at district level, like once again. And I have also mentioned the various data sources here. So since we have a sort of time constraint, I'm only going to talk about the key regression results that have emerged from this. So firstly, we see that a 1 percentage point rise in the share of migrant households is associated with a 0.58 percentage point rise in smartphone usage among men and 0.38 percentage point rise among women. So this salient feature of international migration is evident in our maps as well for both genders. So for instance, if we look at Norshindi, if we look at Munshiganj, if we look at Feni, we see that the red shadings basically here is representing the intensity of smartphone usage, whereas the green bubbles are representing the share of migrant households for that particular district. Again, when we also find that a 1 percentage point rise in the share of migrant households also is associated with a 0.44 percentage point rise in women's internet usage. So it is clear that for women, having an international migrant member is very important for internet usage, but we cannot say that for men, as the results we found were not significant. If we look at the maps, well, when we look at the first map, basically the one for men, we see that districts which have like a darker red shading, which is implying a higher internet usage, may or may not have a higher share of migrant households as represented by the bubbles. But for women, the pattern is more discernible. So for instance, we have like these pockets of migrant districts which have very high international migration in Bangladesh traditionally, like Noakhali, Chandpur, then we also have Feni, Brahmanbaria, etc. And lastly, we also found that 0.01 unit rise in income inequality, again, which was measured by the Gini coefficient, which ranges from 0 to 1, also is associated with a 0.07 percentage point decline in computer usage among women. So the working hypothesis here was that higher inequality will translate into lower usage for either gender. So we are basically looking for darker red shadings with smaller dots. So in the men's graph, we see that there is no basically discernible pattern here, but for women, we see that, for instance, if we look at Nawab Ganj, if we look at Feni, if we look at Kumilla, we see that pattern there, and the opposite pattern, which means lower inequality and higher usage in Khulna and Joshua. So to sum up, what's the key message here? Firstly, having international migrants at household is a very important factor for women's smartphone and internet usage, but that is not true for men. This is important because we want to argue that just pushing forward digital services is not enough if there is no felt need. Households who have international migrants need to communicate with them, need to send or receive money from or to them. So that's why they ultimately end up educating themselves regarding digital literacy. So I would like to hand over to Mehnaz Apana. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema and Opino. So there were some interesting findings from both the papers, but I think the key takeaways for me were, first of all, from Seema's paper, digital literacy is something that we need to be careful when we are defining and measuring. As Mushtaq Bhai mentioned in his presentation, we really have to go sector by sector, service by service, to be able to really understand the relationships there. And also just having digital skills, one skill being able to, read SMS, input a capture code, doesn't mean that people are ready and are going to use all the services that are available. There are hundreds of digital services that the government is providing. Most of them are not used. So that's something to think about. The other point that was interesting is that, people use services when they need to, right? Vaccination registration, people needed to, that's why they've done it. Migration, the connection that we find between migration and use of smartphones was an interesting one. And I think it's an important finding because it can be a predictor of where uptake of digital services can be higher. So if people are, for the designers of these services, if you're looking to increase uptake, there are certain regions in the country where people might be more ready. And also the strategies for increasing uptake should not be obviously the same everywhere. People are not the same. People are at different levels of digital literacy and usage of digital devices. So we don't have any time left. So hopefully we can discuss later if anyone has questions. I'll hand over to Sharif.
Thank you, Mehnaz Appa. I just had two very questions. One was, from the presentation, I heard that even people who were digital literate, for some reason, they didn't want to execute some services from home. I mean, why are they scared? I mean, are we making things complicated than it should be? And I mean, everything that I'm hearing since I've been to Bangladesh over the last 5 years, digital literacy for the recipients. But I guess we also need to have a look at the digital literacy or, the understanding of it for the service provider. I mean, those who are designing the services, if there is an area of improvement over there. So I don't know if any research has been done on that or any benchmark has been taken, because why I'm saying this, in my life, I feel that I'm at a different spectrum of a world, because over the last 25 years, when I was working for the government of Canada and giving e-services, these are the points that we sort of never had to worry about we took some lot of things for granted. So this is also a very good learning opportunity. What I would like every one of us to understand is when Stefan presented that, the willingness, I mean, we need to do a self-retrospection of if we are really designing the right thing. And obviously, I think any transition, we are at a cyborg sort of stage. We are analog, we are digital. Some part of us, some population knows technology, some doesn't. But I think this is the reality, and this is how we need to progress. Criticism and scrutiny is important, and we need to take it as a constructive feedback. So I think what I wanted to say is when we design these things and when we talk about digital literacy, we have to be patient and really looking at the presentation and some of the data, I think we need to unpack more. I mean, people who can use internet, are we on purpose making things difficult than they should be? I mean, what is the cause of it? So I'm gonna ask Mr. Siddiqui Bhai to also talk about some of the digital divide, the few levels.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and distinguished audience. Welcome to my presentations. I will talk about the digital divide. So first of all, what is digital divide? That means who are aware of, who can use, who have the access. So in terms of there are different variants. So we can say there here basically based on the literature, we have divided the digital divide in terms of two terminologies, first digital divide and second digital divide. So this is the presentation, the outline. I will be in brief, I will not read out this, just in a storytelling way, I will describe all the things. So for understanding the digital divide, if we have a look, first and second digital divide. So first digital divide basically refers to the access, whether you have access or not. This is the necessary conditions for having the skills. So skills should be treated as the second digital divide, which we have learned from the previous session also. This is also linked with the digital literacy. So what is the story or the background of the internet perspective? So if we have a look at only 0.4% of Bangladesh population used internet in 2018, and it reached 3.5% in 2011, 103.25 million in 2020, mainly fueled by significant decline in the cost of internet, which enable internet-enabled handset internet service users. Broadband still limited and in big cities, but gradually expanding. Since 2011, actually, we found a steady and impressive growth rate because of the advent of 3G in 2013 and 4G in 2018. We also found pro-rural government policies for benefiting the rural people. So what was that? Implementation of 5275 CIC, Community Information Center, and digitizations of local government institutions. That means some services were provided through digitized way. So introducing ICTs in education, healthcare services, and there were different NGOs initiatives. So we found 74% population ages 15 to 65 years actually had an access to mobile phones, highest among the Asian countries, but the lowest in terms of use. Only 13% of the populations, but 33% among the 15 to 65. So age is a specific criteria which can divide because young people use more internet compared to the older ones. So there should be another gap. Stronger gender gap also persistent, which we found gender gap in internet is 62%. Gender gap in mobile phone ownership is 32%. So a skills gap in gender gap in skills is much higher. So despite strong growth in internet access, basically rural-urban digital divide remains unambiguous. Large rural-urban gap in internet use, with rural dwellers lagging behind 38% compared to the urban counterpart. We have found in LRN East Asia, Asia 2018. The gap is more about skills and uses. This is the second level, then about access, what we first. So rural-urban digital divide causes uneven economic and social benefits. So this is the importance to why we are studying digital divide. In order to reap the benefits of the digitization process, we have to have the digitizations because it could provide efficient, effective uses of services. So in that case, it has one side of economic and social benefit as well. So digital divide basically creates social gender disparities and inequalities. So to reduce or eliminate the disparities for equitable social and economic development is a major challenge for the policymakers. That's why we conducted this study. So research gap on the first and second digital divide, if we have a look at Bangladesh context, particularly they vary by socioeconomic status, gender, even if we have a look at the geography. So in this study, actually, we wanted to provide an assessment of digital divide in rural Bangladesh, not urban. So to aid policymakers, practitioners to reducing the gaps in digital divide and ensuring inclusions in rural Bangladesh. Micro-level internet study, this is an exploring what factors contributed to the first and second level digital divide in rural Bangladesh. If we have a look at the figures, so if we have digital technology, this is the cost and coverage, this induces the divide digital access, this actually linked with inequality, which enforces inequality access, and also personal and potentials inequality. So these are the first level and causal, cumulative and recursive model. If we say we need some motivational factors, which is linked with material access, then this will ensure skills. If we have the skills, then we can utilize more. And this cycles again. Two-stage cluster sampling. This is actually all most of the study actually used this data set from different perspectives. Stage 1, 325 PSU primary sampling unit from the 60 districts, 4 districts, hill districts were excluded. Stage 2, 20 households from each primary sampling unit. This is a cross-sectional study. In 2019, September to November, we surveyed 2019. It's a nationally representative, we say. We selected most digitally literate individual for the interview. We actually applied binary correlation metrics and some OLS, ordinary least square regressions. This is the total scenario. We started with 65 and ended with only 848, which is 13% of the total sample in terms of skills. So this is the overall scenario. And what are the explanatory and outcome variables that we use? This is the factor, the explanatory variables, what individual characteristics explain digital divide: age, household size, education, literacy, household income, occupations, marital status, gender divisions. These are the dependent variable, basically internet access. This is the first to explore the first digital divide, and online skills and uses. This is for the second line digital divide. And this is the basic sampling distributions of the household by age, household size, education, literacy, and gender. So how they varies within the sample, we can have a look just at a glance. Finally, I will show the results. So digital access, and in terms of skills, if we have a look at the figure, access, the variations and skills variations, as well as users variations. Now, if we have a look at the digital divide using probit and OLS regressions, basically, for example, explanatory variable age. In terms of for age category, in terms of access, we found this is a powerful and statistically significant. Young adults have more access to the ICTs, internet access among individual ages up to 34 and above 34 years. If we have a gap, 52% versus only 15%. So marginal effect is 18.5%. So it means that lower aged young adults use more, have more access compared to the older ones. Similarly, for skills, positive and significant marginal access, and we found 8 percentage points difference in skills. Age gap in internet users, this is also, age is also significant here, and individual belonging to the lower age group uses more internet. If we have a look at the educations, so most consistent predictor, higher level of education, so more likely to have access, and also for users motivations and capacity to use internet depends on the education. So here we found the marginal effects is 13, 30 and 40 percentage point for class. We categorize different categories, 1 to 8 SSA and HSA are equivalent and more. So we see how the percentage points vary over the years of educations, and this is a positive. Skills reference category is no education, so how it varies from more education to or different types of education, no education to different levels of education. No significant difference between no education and lower than SSC. It means that if you want to have skills, at least you should have SSC or more, a higher level of education is required. And SSC and above plays a significant internet usage also. In terms of income, yes, we use different categories of income here, and most important determinants for internet access and digital literature. Using BDT 10,000 as a household income as a reference category, probability of internet is positively related with monthly household income. The probability of access to internet are on an average 9, 21, and 28 percentage points. That means progressively higher for higher level of income. No significant associations up to BDT 30,000. That means skills. In order to achieve the skills, you required more higher level of income, which was true for up to 10,000 level of income. It was required for the access, but for skills, you need to have more. For users, income BDT 20,000 and above plays a significant role. And in terms of occupations, there were different categories of occupations we considered for our study, and there were agriculture as reference category we used for the regression. Students, other categories were students, non-agriculture, unemployed category have significantly better than internet access compared to the agricultures. So only marginal effect for student on online skills. That means those samples belonging to the students, actually they had more skill compared to the other categories. And this is the same result is true for the users, significantly better use we found for the students and for the unemployed. And in case of gender, yes, we found persistent gender gap in access. Marginal effect shows a male individual has 18 percentage points more likely to have access. In terms of for skills, strong gender differences, about 38% males have online skills as against of 30% among females. The marginal impact implies a male individual is 9 percentage points more likely compared to female. For the users, we also found positive, significant, and higher magnitudes. That means the gap, gender gap persists in terms of users also. So in terms of division, if we have a look at the special access skills and uses, Rangpur is the most poverty division. So we used, this is the reference category, how it differs from other divisions. So all other divisions have higher level of internet access compared to the Rangpur. So poverty is linked with the internet also. Chattogram has the highest access, internet access. Probabilities are 27 and 20 percentage points higher for Chattogram and Dhaka division. Skills, but in insignificant skills difference between Rangpur and Chattogram. The Chattogram, Dhaka, Khulna, and Rajshahi. Highest likelihood online skill is the highest for Borishal division. Skills, highest level of skills was found for the Borishal divisions compared to others. And Sylhet division is likely lagging behind other divisions. So regional variations significant for Chattogram, Khulna, and Sylhet. Khulna division performs the best. Sylhet performs the worst. So conclusions, and so what are the findings and what are the policy implications of those findings? We found a very clear-cut first level digital and second level digital divide persists in rural Bangladesh. Groups with younger ones, the more educated, literate students, those with more income, male, and those with located in Chattogram and Dhaka have more internet access. Addressing low level of ICT knowledge, poor infrastructural development, internet infrastructure, poverty, and gender issues can bridge the digital divide. Skills, Lower access means lower skills, and lower skills means lower uses. So finally, lower uses means lower benefits from the digitization. But just access to the internet does not ensure skills and internet uses. Therefore, it is important. Bangladesh government needs to ensure skill-based training program, maybe with public-private partnership or at subsidized cost, with a special focus to the rural people of Bangladesh, along with improving access. Universal coverage of ICT and hands-on ICT exercise at all educational institutions help to reduce digital divide in longer term. Targeting women and poor. Poverty hinders access to internet, we found in our findings. Acquiring online skills and internet uses, therefore improving economic conditions and subsidizing internet costs for the disadvantaged group may reduce the digital divide. A special focus should be given to women. Schools and college-based massive ICT program would help to reduce the gender variations in this regard. An international alignment of government aiming to reduce the cost of internet for developing countries like Bangladesh will help to provide internet for all. In terms of infrastructure, access can be increased by providing same internet network signal all around the country. A specific focus by allocating budget should be given to meet the SDG deadline for ICT access and empowerment. Scaling up access point of the internet and scaling up ICT program would reduce the digital divide. Regional variation implies the digital divide is embedded in the heterogeneity in internet access, online skills, and internet uses. Therefore, internet infrastructure development as per regional disparities could be implemented through PPP addressing the regional digital divide. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadat Bhai. I think it was a very good presentation, and your recommendations were very straight. Is Pritika online? Yeah. Okay,
Hi.
so hello, Pritika, hello.
Hello. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yes, Pritika. You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present on digital literacy in this forum. And secondly, please excuse my voice because my throat is giving me a little problem. So if anything happens between the presentation. Okay, so I'll just share my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm Pritika Reddy from the Fiji Islands, and I have been working on digital literacy for the South Pacific. Actually, when we look at the South Pacific and the Fiji Islands, we are well known for digital divide. And when we look at digital literacy, the work on digital literacy in Fiji and the South Pacific has just begun. So when we talk about digital literacy in Fiji, rather in the South Pacific, usually people say digital literacy is about computer literacy or technology literacy. So when I started this project, I came to realize that digital literacy is not just knowing how to use internet or knowing how to use digital device. It is much more than that. So going over our deep literature and working with my supervisors, we came up with a thought that we will develop a framework for digital literacy for the South Pacific and for Fiji. So before, when we look at the work that had been done on digital literacy, it usually referred to the internet skills or the web skills or the awareness of knowing how to knowing how to use the digital devices. So after giving things a little thought, because when we look at the studies that has been done on digital literacy in Fiji, in the South Pacific, and to some extent the world, people are just evaluating computer literacy, information literacy, and technology literacy of people and saying that the digital literacy status of people in this particular country is this much, or probably the digital literacy of this cohort is this much. So when we look at digital literacy from this particular research that I have carried out, we define digital literacy as an individual's ability to find and evaluate information, use this information effectively, create new content using the information, and share and communicate this newly created information using appropriate digital technologies, and understand the ethics surrounding the use of these technologies. So you can see that a range of skills is needed. And when we look at the model for digital literacy, we look at digital literacy from 6 dimensions. So our definition of digital literacy means inclusion of media literacy, which means using digital technology to use internet and interact with different forms of media. Visual literacy, using digital technology to read, interpret, understand information presented in graphics, communicating this information, converting the information into visual representation, and sort of surrounding ethics that lies behind these visuals that we use in our daily lives. We also include communication literacy, meaning using digital technologies to communicate effectively, using publication technologies, the internet, web tools, and technologies. We include technology literacy, that means using digital technology to improve learning, productivity, and performance. And then we have information literacy, where people should be able to find, locate, analyze, synthesize resources that is found on digital platforms, evaluating the credibility, that means differentiating between fake news and authentic news, and then legal and ethical issues that surround the use of information. And then our final dimension was computer literacy. That means using computers, digital technologies, and their applications for practical use. So our framework for digital literacy consists of these 6 dimensions, and using these 6 dimensions, we created a scale. And to give you more information on that, our scale has 6 dimensions, and under each dimension, we have a set of skills or items that needs to be tested. And these items were self-evaluated. So for information literacy, we had a set of 11 questions or 11 items, which were self-evaluated. For example, finding information on the web. What was your range of skills, beginning from the basic to advanced level of understanding? Then under communication literacy, we had 5 skills. Technology literacy, we had 12 skills. Media literacy, we had 13. Visual literacy, we have 13. And computer literacy, we have 6. Now you can see the list of items, so the skills differ per literacy. Why? Because some of the set of skills, they overlap. Like, for example, a skill that we test in information literacy might also be part of communication literacy. So we did not want to repeat any of the item sets or skills. That's why each of the literacies, they had different number of questions. And then what we did, we multiplied it by 5 because it was self-evaluated, meaning from basic to advanced. So let's say if a person says he or she has a basic skill, so we give them a score of 1. So in total, this scale consists of 60 questions, which had a maximum point of 300. And then we had weighted totals. Why weighted totals? Because we had different number of questions. So to be consistent, we decided to have weighted maximum total, which is 10 points per literacy and a total of 60 points. Now using mathematical and statistical papers in evaluating how we could have scales, we came up with 6 levels of scales, because there were a total of 60 points, and then we wanted 6 levels. So we had equally divided each of the levels. Level 1 was 0 to 1 point. Basically, the description would be no understanding. And level 2 would be 11 to 20 points, which means very low understanding. Level 3 is 21 to 30, low understanding. Level 4 is 31 to 40, average understanding. Level 5 is 41 to 50, high understanding. And level 6 is 51 to 60. So using this, we created a skill which is online, And what we do is whenever we have to evaluate digital literacy of individuals, and we begin with the students first, we give them the link for this particular scale, and they self-evaluate themselves in the 6 different literacies that we have used to define digital literacy for the South Pacific. And then once any participant, even anyone out there, if you would like to evaluate your digital literacy status, you could self-evaluate yourself. And at the end of this scale, your total digital literacy status will be given, and your number of points will be given, plus in which literacy you have to improve your score in or your skills in. Now, following your scores, we also created a remediation module. That means once you self-evaluate yourself, we have something that could be used to improve your literacy, each of the 6 literacies and your overall digital literacy. So for this remediation tool, it is gamified. And you can see on the screen that you have 6 literacies there. So if you want to do media literacy, you'll click on media literacy, and then media literacy will have a content informing the individuals about media literacy and what is media literacy, why it is important, what are the components of media literacy, and then the participants can test themselves. It's a 10 quiz question which is gamified. For example, for media literacy, the game is probably collecting the coconuts. So there are 10 questions. For one correct answer, the person is going to climb up the coconut tree. Just to capture the attention of the participants, we have gamified the modules. So for each of the modules, there are different games that keeps the participants engaged. And then at the end of each module, for each literacy, you collect your badges. Let's say for media literacy, if your score is above 8, you will get a gold badge, bronze is 7, and then a silver badge is probably the score is there in which you could be awarded a silver badge. And also in between our modules, the content that the participant reads, we also have coin collection, just to keep the participants again engaged. So upon the completion of all these 6 modules, your score from the scale that you have scored, the self-evaluated scores will be presented, plus the scores that you have attained in the 6 modules. So whatever survey we have done, we have seen an increase in the skills of the participants who had attempted the scale and the modules. So let's say your score in the scale was 7, and then after doing the module, your score went to 9. And then once you are satisfied, there is a digital certificate at the end of the module that will be given to the participants. So I have included the link there for if you want to view how the scale and the modules work, because it's all connected. So anyone can go and attempt this. And for more details on how this scale and the remediation was designed and developed, I already have published papers. You can search me on Google Scholar. All the papers are there with all the details regarding the digital literacy scale and the digital literacy remediation module that has been created for the South Pacific. So this is something that we have started in the South Pacific to improve digital literacy for the Pacific Islanders and to reduce the digital divide that currently exists in Fiji and the South Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratikapa. Very exciting model. I haven't seen anything like this before. I mean, you have done some good work. I'd like to open the floor for questions, Q&A. Question?
Thanks. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you, Pratika. It was good to have you here. since it's late, sir, my first question is addressed to Kritika. I thought you applied that module to your students and maybe to segments of your population. Would like to hear if there, to what extent the results reveal something, whatever. And
Okay, for these students, we looked at two levels. Those who are in secondary school and probably in 1 or 2 years, they will be joining the university. So for our students who are still at secondary level, more than 70% of them have low literacy levels, average to low literacy levels, and the rest, they have some, probably they are literate, or I'm not really sure. I can't give you really an authentic data here because it's self-evaluated. So these students who are in the 30% group, probably we are planning to work on moving from the self-evaluated test to some kind of test so that we have an authentic data about the digital literacy status of our secondary school students. When we look at our university students, we had 60% of the students who had average to high digital literacy status. The reason being is that in universities here, as soon as students enter the universities, they are trained to use digital devices. They are trained to work in technology enhanced learning environments. So when we did our survey, we found that our students were average to high digitally literate. So one of the reasons would be they are exposed to digital technology, they are exposed to technology enhanced learning environments, and then courses such as information literacy are done in the very first week as they enter the university. We are still yet to test this on our population and the industries.
thank you. If you want to pursue with questions towards, aimed at Kritika, then we can finish that. But I have a question for Shahadat. Should I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Shahadat, you ended up suggesting more skill development training. The impression I got. First question is, this is towards the end of your presentation. First question is, what kind of skill development training are you recommending? And the second is, I thought the previous paper suggested that it was largely demand driven. I mean, if there was a need for something, then you go for it. Otherwise, just supply driven skill doesn't actually sustain for too long. Do I need to repeat that question?
So we'll take a few more questions and then.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Tanzir, I'm from BRAC JPG. So the question is to Shahadat sir as well, like you said, the skill-based training program. So whether the government is trying to enhance the TVET program or the curriculum from the next 2023. So what you're suggesting, like their basic will be cleared at the higher secondary level, or like they have to be cleared about their skill-based training at the earlier stage? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? So I guess I'll. Oh, sorry, there is one more. From online. Yeah, somebody could read that.
So there's a question from our Zoom Q&A box. To the moderator, I have a question regarding the service expenses. As a service a civilian got as a dynamic prospect, is he or she digitally acknowledged? Distinguished to the expenditure of this service, is it compatible to the nation who is still facing the digital literacy around 50%? The question is up on the screen as well if you would like to take a look.
So I guess Shatapi can answer.
So the question is to the first presentation. So I understand that Bangladesh is going through a transition period in the digitalization process. And as the first presenter have already mentioned that in near future, there will be the e-service solutions will be directly available by the citizen. And that's why the digital literacy, assessing the digital literacy is important right now. However, one of the comment that the first presenter shared with us about NID, the service was not available directly by the citizen. In fact, they went to the digital center service. And the reason behind was mentioned was the trust issue, or they don't take to maybe to do this in a wrong way or approaching this thing in a wrong way. So in the first session today, we have already heard about that taking the service to the doorsteps, right? So how can you comment on this, even if the service has been designed in a way, in a very clean and clear way, so that anyone can avail the service with a limited digital skill, but even though people are not availing the service directly. So did you have seen any kind of demographical variation about that?
Thank you. So I think we're going to take one more question and then no more. Okay, Shatapi, I think you can answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think two questions are linked with each another. So I come with Dr. Sajjad Joy. Yes, actually, we know that skill is important. We need skills. We need to provide skills-based training. But this is, at the same time, this is important. Actually, mapping of the skills for the rurals. This should come from the demand-based demand assessment. What type of skills basically we need at this point. For example, in Bangladesh, government has introduced with ILO NTBQF qualification framework, National Technical Education Vocational Framework, which actually 1 to 6 level, but we have not reached up to the 6th level. Basically, those who are youth, they have provided different type of skills training, which is internationally recognized. But for my understanding, actually, as we know, economic development and economic gains, whatever we can say, all these are associated with digitization. Even right now, I am working with the World Bank project, which is e-logistic platforms in Bangladesh. That was we are assessing whether firms using e-logistics could, what kind of benefits they have more in terms of those who are not using e-logistics. So that's why E is everywhere. So that is from the rural perspective. Actually, from the rural perspective, for Bangladesh, I think youth, in order to reap the benefits from the youth, they should be provided some types of specific training program. And even it could be linked with the NTBQF qualification framework. They can start with the initial level 1, 2, which is demanded by our industries, even by abroad. So this is my thought regarding the trainings. Thank you.
Thank you. Shatapi,
Shall I? Okay. I'll answer, I think some of the questions have the same answers. So I'll start with the cost of digital services. You can look at it in two ways. One is in the macro level, in the perspective of public expenditure. I think we are very clear in our stand that, it's quite a heavy tax, the kind of expenditure that we're making on digital services. Not all services have the kind of returns that we expect. So it's true that maybe we need to be more careful about investing on these digital services. Just as an example, we have a government e-commerce site, shop that really nobody, I don't use or I didn't know about it, and nobody I know knows about it. And when there are private initiatives and there's DARAs available, no one's going to use that. So there are a lot of services that our public money is going to, which may not be needed. So it's true that it might be a heavy cost for a country like Bangladesh. At the individual level, it's ambiguous though. Some services, sometimes the cost of availing the service digitally might be lower or might be higher. And that connects to another question at the beginning. Shahriyar Bhai posed a question, even if you're digitally literate, why are people not using digital services? It's because sometimes it's just less costly. So for example, very simply for vaccine registration, we have seen that people who can download the Surakha app and very easily register for themselves were not registering themselves. They were getting it done at the corner store. Why? Because they were going to the market, everyone was doing it. They just ordered a cup of tea and the shopkeeper was doing it for them at a nominal price. It was just easier, simpler. They didn't have to bother about, downloading the app, making mistakes. So sometimes the cost is lower doing it that way. Another interesting story we came across in another project for digital finance is an example of the government stipend payment that comes to students. So in a particular village, the stipend recipient phone number for the entire village, everyone was the same. Why was that? Because everyone gave the phone number of the corner store shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper received all the money, and the password for everyone's account was the same. No one knew the password except for the shopkeeper. People just on their way back and forth from the market picked up their stipend from the shopkeeper. So there's this, interesting sense of, we think that passwords are personal. We think passwords are related to privacy, individual privacy. But in our rural communities, people don't think that way. And there are some community dynamics there. There are services that people collectively enjoy. So there are issues like that. Even if you're digitally literate and able to have your own account and receive your stipend in your mobile, you won't, because everyone else is doing it this way. So there are these things that we need to really understand better when we design our services. Thank you. And there was another question, Nutan, for demographic, actually we didn't have time for Obhino's paper, had a lot more. We didn't really find any other significant correlate with income, education, age, with sectoral predominance. We didn't find any other variable that was connected to use of digital devices except for migration. So that's why we focused on that. Thank you. Ruby?
Nutanapa, I guess the question was directed towards me. Okay, it's okay. Yeah, I look into some of the issues of the in my regression. Since my outcome variable was dichotomous, I found positive relation for gender and income and education. If a male respondent avails the service, the probability of availing it increases, and the same is for total income. The total income increases, then the probability of availing the services increases by 4.7%. And similar kind of positive correlation was found in case of education as well, but the result was not significant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have come towards the end. So I'm just gonna share my thoughts for 30 seconds. So I think a lot has been done over very many years right now. The product has been released. I mean, people have seen e-services, people are using it. And I think it's the right time to understand people's behavior. It's very difficult to predict. Our context is not as simple. It's a mixture of lot of scenarios. Even if you're literate, it's easier to go and get the service. I think what's important is now we should sort of collaborate, as Stefan was saying, like you have the willingness, you collaborate, and somebody should champion. So to me, I'm not clear who the champion is, but I think this discussion should not end day after tomorrow. And I would like to see what happens next. I mean, these are big changes. I mean, these are revolutionary changes that requires time and a lot of commitment. But the researchers and the speakers who have given the information, I think we sort of need to collect some of the knowledge that Shadat Bhai has said. Menazapa specifically mentioned some of the skills required specific to those services. Can we map those into Ritikapa's model and create the L1, L2s? And maybe we can create some sort of measurement tool. So I think these are ideas that should come up, and I think such discussion should continue. So with that, I would like to end this session. Thank you for everyone for your attention. Thank you.